Have you ever wondered what happened to the ancient gods that once walked among us? Not the distant deities of prayer and worship, but beings of flesh and bone who taught our ancestors the secrets of civilization before vanishing without a trace. Before cities rose from desert sands, before the first word was carved into stone, there were beings that our ancestors called by many names. The Sumerians knew them as the Anunnaki, those who came from the sky. The Book of Enoch called them the Watchers, luminous beings who brought forbidden knowledge to Earth. Across every continent, from the mountains of Peru to the temples of India, the same story echoes through time. Sky beings descended from above, ruled for ages beyond counting, then disappeared as suddenly as they had come. Why is it that every ancient civilization on Earth tells the same impossible story? Tonight, we journey into the shadows of forgotten history, where clay tablets whisper of these rulers who lived for thousands of years, and ancient texts that speak of watchers who descended from the heavens to shape the destiny of mankind. Prepare yourself for revelations that will challenge everything modern academia teaches about our origins. If these stories stir your curiosity, feel free to settle in and stay with us. Remember to like and subscribe so you can return for more hidden chapters of history. Now let us descend together into the depths of time. The evidence lies buried beneath millennia of sand and silence. In the ruins of ancient Mesopotamia, archaeologists have uncovered thousands of clay tablets that read like administrative records rather than religious texts. These documents don't speak in poetry or metaphor. They list names, dates, and reigns with the precision of bureaucrats recording taxes, yet the numbers they contain defy everything we think we know about human history. The Sumerian king list tells us that before a great flood swept across the earth, 8 rulers governed for a combined total of over 200,000 years. Not decades or centuries, but spans of time that stretch beyond the entirety of recorded civilization. Alulim, the first king, ruled for 28,000 years. His successor reigned for 36,000. These weren't symbolic numbers or poetic exaggerations. They were recorded in exact multiples of a unit the Sumerians called the Sar, a cycle of 3,600 years that appeared to be as fundamental to their mathematics as decades are to ours. What makes these records even more extraordinary is their matter-of-fact tone. The scribes who pressed these words into wet clay weren't writing mythology or religious doctrine. They were keeping official records, the same way modern governments document the terms of presidents and prime ministers. Yet they were documenting reigns that lasted longer than human memory could possibly preserve through oral tradition alone. The city of Eridu stands as the first chapter in this forgotten history. According to the ancient tablets, this was where kingship first descended from heaven. Not evolved from tribal leadership or emerged through conquest, but descended as if it were a gift or technology handed down from above. Archaeological excavations have revealed that Eridu wasn't a gradual settlement that grew over centuries. Its earliest temples appear fully formed, with sophisticated architecture and precise astronomical alignments that suggest advanced knowledge from the very beginning. The same pattern appears at other ancient sites across the globe. Göbekli Tepe in Turkey predates Stonehenge by 6,000 years, yet it was constructed with mathematical precision that rivals modern engineering. Its massive stone pillars, some weighing 50 tons, were arranged in perfect circles aligned to specific constellations. The builders possessed knowledge of astronomy that historians claim shouldn't have existed for thousands of years. Who were these mysterious architects, and where did their knowledge come from? In the highlands of Peru, the fortress of Sacsayhuaman displays stonework so precise that modern engineers struggle to explain how it was accomplished. The Inca people who lived there claimed they didn't build these walls. They found them, already ancient when their civilization began. The stones fit together with such perfection that not even a knife blade can slip between the joints, despite some blocks weighing over 100 tons. No mortar was used, yet the structures have survived earthquakes that leveled everything built around them. These aren't isolated mysteries. From the pyramids of Giza to the temples of Angkor Wat, ancient sites around the world share impossible precision and astronomical alignments that suggest a unified knowledge system. It's as if the same architects left their signature across continents, building monuments that would endure long after their civilization disappeared. The ancient texts provide names for these enigmatic builders. The Mesopotamian tablets speak of the Anunnaki as beings who established the first cities and taught humans the arts of civilization. They weren't described as ethereal spirits or abstract forces of nature. They had physical forms, lived in specific locations, and interacted directly with human kings and priests. The tablets record their decisions, their conflicts, and their eventual departure with the same attention to detail that modern historians use to document political events. According to these records, the Anunnaki came to Earth seeking gold to repair their damaged atmosphere. They established mining operations and created humans to serve as workers through genetic manipulation of existing hominids. This wasn't presented as religious doctrine, but as straightforward historical fact. The tablets describe the process of creation as a deliberate engineering project, with specific beings assigned different roles in developing and managing the human workforce. The Book of Enoch, discovered among the Dead Sea Scrolls, tells a remarkably similar story using different names. It describes the Watchers as angels who descended to Earth in the days of Jared, a time when humanity was still primitive and scattered. These beings taught humans the secrets of metalworking, agriculture, astronomy, and writing. They shared knowledge that transformed nomadic tribes into the first civilizations. But the story takes a darker turn. The Watchers began to intermingle with human women, producing offspring called the Nephilim. These giant beings became mighty warriors and rulers, but their existence violated cosmic law. The text describes a great judgment that followed, with the Watchers imprisoned beneath mountains and their hybrid children destroyed by a worldwide flood. The parallels between Sumerian and Hebrew traditions are striking. Both describe beings from the sky who taught humans advanced knowledge. Both mention forbidden unions between divine beings and mortals. Both culminate in a catastrophic flood that reset human civilization. These similarities exist despite the cultures being separated by thousands of years and hundreds of miles. Similar flood myths appear in cultures around the world, from the Americas to Asia. The Hopi speak of previous worlds destroyed by water. Hindu texts describe cyclic ages ending in cosmic dissolution. Chinese legends tell of great floods that drowned the ancient kingdoms. These aren't vague references to local flooding, but detailed accounts of worldwide catastrophes that wiped out advanced civilizations. Modern geology provides evidence for such events. Around 12,000 years ago, the Earth experienced a sudden climate collapse known as the Younger Dryas period. Temperatures plunged, massive fires swept across continents, and many large animal species went extinct. Some scientists attribute this to comet impacts or massive volcanic eruptions. Whatever the cause, it marked the end of the last ice age and the beginning of our current geological epoch. This timing aligns remarkably well with the flood myths and the end of the long-lived rulers described in ancient texts. After the catastrophe, the Sumerian king list shows a dramatic change. Where pre-flood kings ruled for tens of thousands of years, post-flood rulers had lifespans measured in mere centuries. It's as if something fundamental changed in the world after the Great Reset. The evidence suggests that human civilization is far older than mainstream history acknowledges. Before the flood, there may have been advanced societies with knowledge and technology that we're only beginning to rediscover. The mysterious builders who created impossible monuments around the world might have been survivors of that lost civilization, preserving fragments of ancient wisdom in stone. Archaeological discoveries continue to challenge conventional timelines. In Turkey, underwater ruins near the coast reveal structures that were above sea level over 7,000 years ago. In India, sonar surveys have detected massive stone formations beneath the Arabian Sea. These submerged sites suggest that significant civilizations existed before rising sea levels drowned coastal regions at the end of the Ice Age. The genetic evidence adds another layer to the mystery. Recent DNA studies have revealed that modern humans carry genetic markers that are far older than our species should possess. Some sequences appear to have been inserted rather than inherited through normal evolutionary processes. While mainstream science explains these as statistical anomalies, they align remarkably well with ancient accounts of genetic manipulation by advanced beings. The human genome contains mysteries that scientists are only beginning to understand. Within our DNA lie sequences that don't follow the expected patterns of natural inheritance. These genetic anomalies appear in populations across the globe, suggesting they entered our bloodline through a single source rather than developing independently in different regions. What makes this discovery particularly intriguing is the nature of these genetic insertions. They contain information that seems almost deliberately placed, like code written by an intelligent programmer. Some of these sequences resemble patterns found in organisms that can survive extreme conditions, radiation levels, and temperatures that would kill normal life forms. It's as if our ancestors were modified to withstand environments that no longer exist on Earth. The Book of Genesis mentions this genetic intervention in veiled language. It speaks of the sons of God taking wives from among the daughters of men, producing children who became mighty warriors and rulers. These offspring, called Nephilim, were described as giants who dominated the ancient world before the flood destroyed them. The text passes over these beings quickly, as if their existence was too dangerous to explore in detail. Ancient artwork from around the world depicts these hybrid beings with remarkable consistency. Mesopotamian cylinder seals show tall figures with elongated heads standing among normal humans. Egyptian hieroglyphs portray gods with unusual cranial features interacting with pharaohs. South American pottery displays beings with large eyes and strange proportions. These artistic representations span thousands of years and vast distances, yet they share common characteristics that suggest they were depicting real entities rather than imaginary deities. In the mountains of Peru, archaeologists have discovered skulls that don't match any known human population. These elongated craniums have volume capacities 50% larger than normal human brains. The bone structure is different, lacking the suture lines that allow human skulls to expand during childhood. Carbon dating places some of these remains at over 2,000 years old, predating any known skull modification practices in the region. Similar anomalous remains have been found in other parts of the world. In Russia, the Caucasus region has yielded skeletons with unusual bone density and proportions. In Egypt, private collections contain mummies with cranial features that don't appear in mainstream museum displays. These discoveries are often dismissed as deformities or cultural modifications, but the consistency of the anomalies suggests something more systematic was occurring in ancient populations. The Watchers described in the Book of Enoch were said to be 200 in number when they first descended to Earth. They established themselves on Mount Hermon, a peak that lies at the intersection of modern-day Israel, Lebanon, and Syria. This mountain has been considered sacred by every culture that settled in the region, from ancient Canaanites to modern religious groups. Archaeological surveys have revealed extensive ancient construction on its slopes, including massive stone foundations that predate known civilizations in the area. These beings weren't content to remain isolated on their mountain sanctuary. According to the ancient texts, they divided into groups and spread across the inhabited world. Each group was assigned specific knowledge to share with human populations. Some taught metallurgy, showing humans how to extract copper and tin from rock and forge them into bronze. Others shared the secrets of agriculture, transforming nomadic hunters into settled farmers who could support larger populations. The most dangerous knowledge involved astronomy and mathematics. The Watchers revealed the movements of celestial bodies, the calculation of calendar systems, and the prediction of eclipses. This information allowed human rulers to claim divine authority by appearing to control the heavens themselves. Kings who could predict when the sun would go dark or when specific stars would appear gained tremendous power over their subjects. But knowledge came with consequences. As human civilizations grew more sophisticated, they began to challenge the authority of their teachers. The tablets speak of rebellions and conflicts between different groups of watchers, with humans caught in the middle of divine politics. Some beings wanted to withdraw from Earth entirely, while others sought to maintain their influence over human affairs. The genetic experiments continued throughout this period. The Watchers produced offspring not only through direct reproduction, but also through more sophisticated manipulation of human bloodlines. Certain families were selected to carry specific genetic traits, creating dynasties of rulers who possessed abilities that set them apart from ordinary humans. These royal bloodlines claimed divine ancestry and maintained their power through careful breeding programs designed to preserve their enhanced characteristics. The legends of every ancient culture contain references to these god kings who ruled for impossibly long periods. In Egypt, the Turin king list mentions rulers who governed for thousands of years before the first dynasty began. Hindu texts describe the Satya Yuga, an age when divine beings lived among humans and lifespans stretched across millennia. Chinese records speak of legendary emperors who reigned for centuries and possessed supernatural abilities. These weren't metaphorical or symbolic accounts. The ancient chroniclers recorded specific names, dates, and achievements with the same attention to detail they used for more recent historical figures. They distinguished clearly between mythological stories and historical records, placing these long-lived rulers in the latter category despite their extraordinary longevity. The technology possessed by these ancient rulers appears in artifacts that mainstream archaeology struggles to explain. The Baghdad Battery, discovered in Iraq, consists of a clay jar containing a copper cylinder and iron rod that can generate electrical current when filled with acidic liquid. Similar devices have been found throughout the Middle East, suggesting that electrical knowledge was widespread in the ancient world. In Egypt, the Dendera temple contains reliefs that appear to show large bulb-like objects connected to cables and power sources. The hieroglyphs surrounding these images use terminology that translates to words meaning light, illumination, and energy. Modern electrical engineers who have studied these carvings note that they follow principles of electrical circuits and vacuum tube technology. The Saqqara bird, found in an Egyptian tomb, displays aerodynamic properties that shouldn't exist in ancient art. When examined by aeronautical engineers, the wooden model demonstrates principles of flight that weren't understood by conventional archaeology until the 20th century. Its proportions and wing design suggest knowledge of lift, thrust, and stability that ancient cultures supposedly didn't possess. These technological artifacts appear alongside references to flying vehicles in ancient texts. The Sanskrit epics of India describe vimanas, aircraft capable of traveling great distances and engaging in aerial warfare. The descriptions include technical details about propulsion systems, navigation methods, and weapons that sound remarkably similar to modern military technology. The Mesopotamian epic of Etana tells of a king who flew to heaven in an eagle-shaped craft, describing the earth shrinking below him until it appeared as a small disk surrounded by water. This aerial perspective wouldn't have been possible for ancient people to imagine without actual experience of high-altitude flight. Similar accounts appear in cultures around the world. Native American legends speak of sky beings who traveled in luminous craft. Aboriginal Australians describe the rainbow serpent arriving from the stars in a fiery vehicle. African tribes tell of gods who descended from the heavens in objects that glowed like metal in the sun. The consistency of these accounts across isolated cultures suggests they were describing real phenomena rather than imaginary stories. The technical details embedded in these legends often prove accurate when examined by modern experts, indicating that the ancient witnesses possessed sophisticated understanding of advanced technology. As human populations grew and spread across the continents, conflicts arose between different groups of watchers and their human subjects. The Book of Enoch describes increasing violence and corruption as the hybrid offspring of divine beings and humans began competing for territory and resources. These Nephilim giants became warlords who oppressed normal human populations and fought brutal wars against each other. The Watchers themselves became divided over how to handle the deteriorating situation. Some wanted to intervene directly to restore order, while others preferred to withdraw and allow human civilization to collapse. The Celestial Council ultimately decided that the experiment had failed and that drastic action was needed to prevent further contamination of the human genetic line. The judgment came in the form of a worldwide catastrophe that ancient texts describe in remarkably similar terms. Waters rose from beneath the earth while rain fell from above. The foundations of the great deep burst forth while the windows of heaven opened. Earthquakes shook the ground as massive waves swept across continents, drowning cities and erasing the evidence of advanced prehistoric civilizations. This wasn't portrayed as divine anger or moral punishment, but as a practical solution to a problem that had gotten out of control. The flood served as a reset button, eliminating the hybrid populations and most evidence of advanced technology while preserving a small remnant of unmodified humans who could restart civilization from a more primitive level. The geological record supports the occurrence of such catastrophic events. Ice core samples show evidence of massive climate disruption around the time period described in flood myths. Sediment layers reveal tsunami deposits far inland from current coastlines. Magnetic field reversals and asteroid impact signatures appear in rock formations dating to the end of the last ice age. Marine archaeology has discovered evidence of human settlements submerged far below current sea levels. Off the coast of India, sonar mapping has revealed the remains of cities that were above water 7,000 years ago. In the Mediterranean, underwater surveys have found harbors and structures that predate known maritime civilizations by millennia. These discoveries suggest that advanced human societies existed during the last ice age when sea levels were much lower than today. As the ice sheets melted and oceans rose, coastal civilizations would have been drowned, leaving only highland settlements to preserve fragments of ancient knowledge. The survivors of this catastrophe faced the enormous task of rebuilding human civilization from scattered remnants. The Watchers had departed, taking their advanced technology with them and leaving behind only stone monuments and oral traditions to preserve the memory. The new of what had been lost world that emerged from the flood was smaller, more primitive, and largely cut off from the celestial knowledge that had once guided human development. The survivors who emerged from the flooded world carried with them fragments of memory that would shape every culture to follow. In scattered settlements across the transformed landscape, they passed down stories of the time before, when giants walked the earth and gods ruled from golden thrones. These weren't bedtime tales or religious parables. They were desperate attempts to preserve knowledge that could mean the difference between civilization and chaos. In the mountains of Armenia, Noah's descendants spoke of the ark that had carried them through the deluge, but their accounts contained details that never made it into later religious texts. They described the vessel not as a wooden boat, but as a sealed chamber with its own source of light and air. The instructions for its construction had come from Enoch, the man who walked with God and was taken up to heaven before the flood arrived. Enoch's story appears in fragments across multiple ancient traditions, but the most complete account was hidden away for centuries until archaeologists discovered it among the Dead Sea Scrolls. This text reveals that Enoch wasn't simply a righteous man chosen for divine favor. He was selected by the Watchers themselves to serve as a mediator between their realm and humanity. For 365 years, he traveled between Earth and the celestial kingdom, learning the secrets that governed both worlds. The knowledge Enoch acquired during his journeys included detailed maps of the heavens, mathematical formulas for calculating celestial movements, and most importantly, a complete record of what had transpired between the Watchers and humanity. This information was compiled into books that were hidden away before the flood, sealed in containers designed to survive the coming catastrophe. According to the text, these hidden libraries contained far more than religious instruction. They held technical manuals describing how to harness natural forces, medical knowledge for healing diseases, and architectural plans for constructing buildings that could withstand earthquakes. The Watchers had given humanity a complete educational system, but it was scattered and concealed to prevent it from being misused again. After the flood waters receded, scattered groups of survivors began searching for these hidden archives. The quest for lost knowledge became the driving force behind early human exploration. Expeditions ventured into remote caves, climbed dangerous peaks, and excavated buried ruins, all seeking the libraries that Enoch had concealed before the Great Destruction. Some of these searches proved successful. In the highlands of Tibet, monks discovered texts written in languages that predated known writing systems. These documents contained star charts accurate to within degrees that modern astronomy didn't achieve until the invention of telescopes. They also included medical procedures using plants and minerals that contemporary science is only beginning to understand. The ancient Egyptians claimed that their civilization was founded when Thoth, the god of wisdom, retrieved sacred books from a hidden vault beneath the rising floodwaters. These texts allegedly contained the complete science of the previous world, including instructions for mummification, pyramid construction, and navigation by the stars. The priests guarded this knowledge carefully, sharing only fragments with the pharaohs and taking most of it to their graves. In South America, indigenous legends speak of Viracocha, a bearded god who emerged from Lake Titicaca carrying stone tablets covered with symbols. He traveled throughout the Andes, teaching the people agriculture, astronomy, and architecture before disappearing into the Western Ocean. The knowledge he shared enabled the construction of cities like Tiwanaku and Sacsayhuaman, built with precision that still baffles modern engineers. The patterns in these post-flood civilizations reveal the influence of recovered ancient knowledge. Megalithic construction techniques appear simultaneously in locations thousands of miles apart. Astronomical alignments follow the same mathematical principles across different continents. Metallurgical advances happen in parallel among cultures that had no known contact with each other. This wasn't coincidence or independent development. It was the systematic rediscovery and application of pre-flood science that had been preserved in hidden archives. The Watchers had prepared for the coming destruction by creating multiple backup copies of essential knowledge, distributed across the globe in locations that would survive the catastrophe. The megalithic monuments that dot the ancient world served as more than temples or tombs. They were libraries built from stone, with information encoded in their dimensions, alignments, and acoustic properties. The Great Pyramid of Giza contains mathematical constants that weren't officially discovered until modern times. Stonehenge functions as a sophisticated computer for calculating astronomical events. The temple complexes of Malta incorporate sound frequencies that can alter human consciousness. These stone libraries required keys to unlock their secrets. The keys were passed down through carefully selected bloodlines that claimed descent from the antediluvian kings. These royal families maintained their authority not through military might alone, but through exclusive access to ancient wisdom that allowed them to predict eclipses, navigate by the stars, and construct monuments that defied the engineering capabilities of their time. The pharaohs of Egypt traced their lineage back to the Neteru, the primordial gods who ruled before the flood. The kings of Mesopotamia claimed descent from the Anunnaki themselves. In India, the royal families insisted they were born from the solar and lunar dynasties established by divine beings in the previous age. These weren't empty boasts or political propaganda. They were assertions of genetic inheritance that carried specific knowledge and abilities. Modern DNA analysis has revealed that certain aristocratic bloodlines do indeed carry genetic markers that set them apart from general populations. These genetic signatures appear in royal families across Europe, Asia, and the Americas, suggesting a common ancestral source that predates known historical connections between these regions. The abilities associated with these bloodlines included enhanced memory, mathematical intuition, and sensitivity to magnetic fields and sound frequencies. These traits would have been essential for preserving and utilizing the complex information contained in the stone libraries left by the previous civilization. Archaeological evidence supports the existence of global knowledge networks in the ancient world. Identical symbols appear on monuments separated by oceans. Mathematical relationships between distant sites suggest coordinated planning. Materials found in construction projects came from quarries located thousands of miles away, indicating sophisticated transportation and communication systems. The Antikythera mechanism, recovered from a Greek shipwreck, demonstrates the level of precision that ancient craftsmen could achieve when working with recovered knowledge. This bronze computer could calculate the positions of celestial bodies, predict eclipses, and track the timing of Olympic Games. Its complexity rivals mechanical devices that weren't developed again until the 18th century. Similar mechanisms have been discovered in other locations, suggesting that precision engineering was more widespread in the ancient world than conventional history acknowledges. These devices required mathematical knowledge, metallurgical skills, and manufacturing techniques that supposedly didn't exist until the modern era. The builders of these sophisticated instruments were working from templates and formulas that had been preserved from before the flood. They weren't inventing new technology, but reconstructing ancient designs that had been scattered and partially lost during the Great Catastrophe. Trade networks in the ancient world moved more than goods and materials. They carried information, techniques, and genetic lineages across vast distances. Phoenician merchants traveled routes that connected Britain to India, carrying not just tin and spices, but also knowledge and bloodlines that maintained the continuity of pre-flood wisdom. The mystery schools that emerged in various civilizations served as repositories for this traveling knowledge. The Egyptian priesthood, the Babylonian magi, the Celtic druids, and the Indian Brahmins all maintained similar traditions despite their geographic separation. They taught identical principles of astronomy, mathematics, and natural philosophy because they were all drawing from the same ancient source. These schools were highly selective in their membership, accepting only candidates who could demonstrate the proper genetic heritage and mental capabilities. The knowledge they guarded was considered too dangerous for general distribution, capable of conferring power that could be misused by those without the proper spiritual and intellectual preparation. The initiates of these schools underwent rigorous training that lasted decades. They memorized vast amounts of information without writing it down, ensuring that the knowledge could survive even if all physical records were destroyed. They learned to recognize and interpret the symbolic languages embedded in megalithic monuments, allowing them to access the stone libraries wherever they traveled. The training included practical skills like navigation, engineering, and medicine, but also esoteric abilities like divination, telepathy, and the manipulation of natural forces. These weren't supernatural powers, but advanced applications of scientific principles that modern technology is only beginning to rediscover. The graduates of these schools became the advisors to kings, the architects of great monuments, and the explorers who pushed the boundaries of the known world. They maintained communication networks that spanned continents, sharing discoveries and coordinating projects that required resources from multiple civilizations. But the knowledge they preserved came with a price. If you're still here listening, leave a like so we know you're following along, and stay with me as we step into the next part of our journey. The same forces that had led to the corruption and destruction of the antediluvian world remained active in human nature. As civilizations grew more powerful and their rulers more ambitious, the temptation to misuse ancient wisdom became increasingly difficult to resist. The Watchers had departed, but their influence lived on in the genetic heritage they had left behind. The descendants of the Nephilim carried both the gifts and the curses of their divine ancestry. They possessed enhanced abilities, but also enhanced appetites for power, conquest, and domination that eventually led them down the same destructive path that had doomed their predecessors. The cycles of rise and fall that characterize human history reflect this ongoing struggle between the constructive and destructive applications of ancient knowledge. Civilizations would rediscover fragments of pre-flood science, use it to build great empires, then destroy themselves through warfare, environmental degradation, or social collapse when the knowledge was turned toward harmful purposes. The pattern repeated across the globe. The Minoans mastered maritime technology and trade networks before disappearing suddenly from history. The Indus Valley Civilization developed sophisticated urban planning and water management systems before abandoning their cities. The Maya achieved remarkable advances in astronomy and mathematics before their empire collapsed into warfare and ecological disaster. Each collapse scattered the surviving knowledge further, forcing future civilizations to start over with even fewer pieces of the original puzzle. The libraries of Alexandria, Babylon, and other great centers of learning were burned, flooded, or buried, taking with them irreplaceable records of ancient wisdom. Yet the most important knowledge survived because it had been encoded in forms that transcended written language. The stone monuments continued to broadcast their information through mathematical relationships, astronomical alignments, and acoustic properties. The genetic lineages carried forward the biological templates necessary to interpret these signals. The mystery schools maintained the oral traditions that provided the keys to unlock the ancient codes. This distributed preservation system ensured that no single catastrophe could completely erase the legacy of the Watchers. Even as individual civilizations rose and fell, the underlying knowledge remained accessible to those who knew how to look for it and had the genetic heritage necessary to understand what they found. The search for this hidden knowledge became the secret motivation behind many historical developments that seem unconnected on the surface. The voyages of exploration that led to the discovery of the New World were guided by ancient maps that showed lands that supposedly didn't exist. The construction of medieval cathedrals incorporated geometric principles and acoustic properties derived from pre-flood architecture. The scientific revolution of the Renaissance was sparked by the rediscovery of classical texts that contained fragments of antediluvian wisdom. Throughout history, small groups of initiated individuals have worked to piece together the scattered fragments of ancient knowledge while concealing their activities from those who would misuse such information. These hidden networks have influenced the development of art, science, politics, and religion, always working toward the eventual restoration of the complete system that had been lost in the flood. The symbols they used to identify themselves and communicate with each other appear in the decorative programs of major buildings, the layouts of important cities, and the iconography of powerful institutions. To those who understand the code, these symbols reveal the presence of an ongoing project that has continued unbroken since the destruction of the antediluvian world. The ultimate goal of this project appears to be the reconstruction of the original knowledge system in a form that can be safely integrated with human civilization. This requires not just the recovery of ancient information, but also the development of social and ethical frameworks that can prevent the misuse that led to previous catastrophes. The Watchers may have departed physically, but their influence continues through the knowledge they embedded in human genetics, stone monuments, and carefully preserved traditions. The question facing our current civilization is whether we have developed the wisdom necessary to handle the complete restoration of their legacy, or whether we are destined to repeat the same cycle of discovery, corruption, and destruction that has characterized human history for millennia. The signs suggest that we are approaching another critical juncture in this ancient cycle. Our technology is beginning to approach the capabilities that the pre-flood civilizations possessed. Our genetic knowledge is revealing the same modification signatures that marked the descendants of the Watchers. Our archaeological discoveries are uncovering evidence of the advanced ancient world that mainstream history has long denied. The question is not whether the ancient knowledge will be fully recovered. The preservation systems put in place by the Watchers ensure that it will eventually resurface completely. The question is whether humanity will be ready to handle such power responsibly, or whether we will follow our predecessors into another cycle of destruction and renewal. The stones continue to whisper their secrets to those who know how to listen. The bloodlines carry forward their genetic inheritance. The hidden networks maintain their ancient vigil. Somewhere in the intersection systems lies the complete of these three preservation legacy of the Watchers, waiting for the right moment and the right people to reclaim their birthright from the sky. The ancient bloodlines that survived the Great Catastrophe carried more than just genetic memories. They bore the responsibility of rebuilding a world that had lost its connection to the heavens. In the scattered settlements that emerged from the flood's aftermath, these chosen families became the architects of a new civilization, but one built from the fragments of something far grander. In the valleys between the Tigris and Euphrates, where mud still bore the scars of the Great Deluge, the descendants of the Anunnaki began their work. They possessed knowledge that seemed impossible for people living in reed huts and tending primitive gardens. Yet they knew how to read the stars, how to calculate the flooding of rivers, and how to construct buildings that would stand for thousands of years. The ziggurat of Ur rose from the desert like a mountain built by human hands. Its massive brick walls climbed toward the sky in 7 perfect tiers, each one smaller than the last, creating a stairway that seemed to reach toward the stars themselves. The mathematical precision of its construction defied the supposed limitations of Bronze Age engineering. Every angle, every measurement, every stone had been placed according to formulas that had survived from before the world changed. But this wasn't just impressive architecture. The ziggurat served as a communication device, designed to amplify certain frequencies and resonate with cosmic rhythms that the builders still remembered. At specific times of year, when the stars aligned in particular patterns, the structure would hum with subtle vibrations that could be felt rather than heard. The priests who tended the temple understood that they were maintaining more than a place of worship. They were keeping alive a technology that connected Earth to something far beyond its atmosphere. Similar structures appeared across the ancient world with remarkable speed. In Egypt, the first pyramids rose from the desert with mathematical relationships that encoded the dimensions of the planet itself. The Great Pyramid of Giza contained measurements that corresponded to the circumference of Earth, the distance to the sun, and the precession of the equinoxes. This wasn't coincidental symbolism. It was a deliberate encoding of cosmic data in permanent stone. The builders of these monuments possessed surveying tools and construction techniques that mainstream archaeology struggles to explain. They moved blocks weighing hundreds of tons with precision that modern cranes would find challenging. They aligned their structures to cardinal directions with accuracy that requires sophisticated instruments. They incorporated acoustic properties that can focus sound waves and create resonance chambers that affect human brainwaves. These weren't primitive people stumbling toward civilization through trial and error. They were the inheritors of a scientific tradition that stretched back to the time when gods walked among mortals. The flood had scattered their knowledge and destroyed their cities, but the essential information had survived in the minds and blood of those chosen to carry it forward. The mystery schools that emerged in various civilizations served as repositories for this inherited wisdom. In Egypt, the House of Life attached to each major temple contained libraries where priest scribes preserved texts written in multiple languages and scripts. Many of these documents were copies of copies, transcribed from originals that had been old when the pharaohs first claimed their thrones. The Egyptian texts spoke of the Zep Tepi the first time, when the Neteru ruled directly over the Nile Valley. These weren't mythological gods dwelling in some ethereal realm. They were described as physical beings with advanced knowledge who established the foundations of Egyptian civilization before withdrawing to let their human successors continue the work. The papyrus scrolls contained detailed instructions for mummification, but not just for preserving dead bodies. The techniques described could maintain organic tissue in a state of suspended animation, as if the ancient Egyptians possessed medical knowledge that could extend life far beyond normal human limits. The chemicals used in the process included compounds that modern science has only recently discovered can halt cellular decay and prevent the breakdown of neural tissue. In the temples of Mesopotamia, cuneiform tablets recorded similar advanced knowledge disguised as religious instruction. The Epic of Gilgamesh, long considered a work of literature, contains precise geographical descriptions of regions that weren't officially explored until the 19th century. The poem describes Gilgamesh traveling to lands beyond the great waters where the sun doesn't set. a reference that can only make sense if the ancient Sumerians knew about Arctic regions during summer months. The mathematical tablets found in Babylonian libraries demonstrate knowledge of advanced geometry, algebra, and trigonometry that wasn't supposed to exist until Greek mathematicians developed these concepts centuries later. But the Babylonian calculations were more sophisticated, incorporating concepts like irrational numbers and infinite series that European mathematics didn't rediscover until the Renaissance. These weren't gradual developments achieved through generations of scholarly work. They appeared suddenly in the historical record, as if complete mathematical systems had been imported from elsewhere and adapted for local use. The scribes who recorded these calculations were working from templates that had been perfected long before their own civilization began. The astronomical knowledge preserved in these ancient libraries surpasses what should have been possible for people using naked-eye observations. Babylonian astronomers could predict eclipses, calculate planetary positions, and track the precession of equinoxes with accuracy that required understanding of celestial mechanics. They knew about planets that can't be seen without telescopes and described their orbital characteristics with precision that modern astronomy has confirmed. The Mayan civilization in Central America developed parallel astronomical knowledge despite having no known contact with Old World cultures. Their calendar system tracked celestial cycles with mathematical precision that rivals modern atomic clocks. They calculated the length of the solar year to within minutes of current measurements and predicted lunar eclipses thousands of years into the future. But the Maya possessed knowledge that went beyond simple astronomy. Their texts describe the movement of Venus with detail that requires understanding of its phases, retrograde motion, and synodic period. They tracked the galactic center and calculated its relationship to Earth's position with accuracy that depends on observations spanning many centuries. The Mayan creation myth, the Popol Vuh, describes previous worlds that were destroyed by cosmic catastrophes. The current world, according to their calculations, began on a date that corresponds closely to the end of the last ice age, when global temperatures rose rapidly and sea levels increased dramatically. This wasn't mythological symbolism, but historical record-keeping that preserved the memory of actual geological events. The stone monuments the Maya constructed serve as permanent records of this astronomical knowledge. The pyramid at Chichen Itza creates shadow effects during equinoxes that demonstrate understanding of Earth's axial tilt and orbital mechanics. The complex at Palenque incorporates architectural features that frame specific stellar alignments and mark important calendrical dates through interactions between sunlight and stone. These structures require generations of precise observations to design and construct. The knowledge they embody couldn't have been developed by the Maya alone during their relatively brief period of cultural prominence. Like their counterparts in Egypt and Mesopotamia, the Maya were inheriting and applying scientific principles that had been developed by earlier civilizations. The similarities between these geographically separated cultures extend beyond astronomy and mathematics. They shared symbolic languages that appear in architectural decorations, religious iconography, and artistic representations. The winged disc appears in Egyptian, Mesopotamian, and South American art, despite these cultures having no supposed contact with each other. The symbol represents more than abstract religious concepts. In many contexts, it appears to depict an actual object, something circular with extending features that could be wings, flames, or energy emanations. Ancient artists were remarkably consistent in their portrayal of technological details, suggesting they were depicting something they had actually observed rather than imagining symbolic representations. The feathered serpent appears in cultures across the Americas, from the Arctic to the Andes. This figure is always associated with the gift of knowledge, the establishment of civilization, and promises to return in the future. The descriptions include technical details about the serpent's appearance, behavior, and capabilities that suggest the symbol represents memories of actual encounters rather than mythological inventions. In Asia, dragon legends follow similar patterns. Chinese dragons are described as beings capable of flight who brought wisdom to early emperors and established the foundations of Chinese civilization. Japanese dragons possess similar characteristics and are associated with control over natural forces like weather and earthquakes. These aren't random folklore but consistent traditions that preserve common memories across isolated cultures. The genetic evidence supports the existence of widespread ancient connections between human populations. DNA analysis reveals that certain genetic markers appear in groups separated by vast distances and supposed historical isolation. These shared genetic signatures suggest either ancient migration patterns that mainstream archaeology doesn't recognize or common ancestral sources that predate known human dispersal. The most intriguing genetic findings involve sequences that don't follow normal inheritance patterns. These genetic insertions appear suddenly in the historical record without clear evolutionary predecessors. They're found in populations across all continents, but in concentrations that suggest selective breeding or artificial enhancement rather than natural selection. Some of these genetic sequences appear to enhance specific cognitive abilities. Populations carrying particular markers show increased mathematical intuition, enhanced memory capacity, and improved spatial reasoning. These traits would have been essential for preserving and applying the complex knowledge systems that ancient civilizations demonstrated. The bloodlines that maintained these genetic enhancements often became the ruling classes of their respective civilizations. Royal families across the ancient world claimed descent from gods or divine beings, but these claims may have been based on actual genetic inheritance rather than political propaganda. The abilities associated with royal bloodlines included enhanced longevity, resistance to disease, and cognitive capabilities that set them apart from general populations. Archaeological evidence reveals that royal burials often included sophisticated medical procedures and preservation techniques that suggest these individuals were considered biologically different from common people. Egyptian pharaohs were mummified using processes that required detailed knowledge of human anatomy and chemistry. Their burial chambers contained medical instruments and pharmaceutical preparations that demonstrate advanced understanding of surgical procedures and drug therapy. The royal tombs also contained technological artifacts that don't fit conventional understanding of ancient capabilities. Gold objects with intricate electronic-looking circuitry, crystal devices with optical properties, and metal alloys that require high-temperature furnaces and sophisticated metallurgy. These weren't ceremonial decorations, but functional objects whose purposes remain mysterious to modern investigators. The construction techniques used in royal monuments demonstrate engineering knowledge that exceeds what should have been possible with ancient technology. The massive stone blocks used in pyramids, temples, and fortresses were quarried, transported, and positioned with precision that modern equipment would find challenging. The joints between stones are so tight that mortar wasn't needed, yet the structures have survived earthquakes and weathering for thousands of years. The tools found at ancient construction sites don't match the sophistication of the work they supposedly produced. Copper chisels and wooden levers couldn't have shaped granite blocks or moved stones weighing hundreds of tons. The discrepancy suggests that advanced tools were used but not left behind, either because they were too valuable to abandon or because they were made from materials that didn't survive the passage of time. Some ancient texts provide hints about these missing technologies. Sanskrit epics describe weapons that could level mountains and vehicles that could travel through air and space. Egyptian hieroglyphs mention the followers of Horus, who possessed knowledge of flight and controlled forces that could move massive stones. Mesopotamian tablets refer to the Anunnaki, using devices that could reshape landscapes and create artificial environments. These descriptions were long dismissed as fantasy or religious metaphor, but modern analysis reveals technical details that align with advanced physics and engineering principles. The weapons described in the Mahabharata produce effects consistent with nuclear explosions, including thermal radiation, electromagnetic pulses, and radioactive contamination. The Vimanas described in Sanskrit texts follow aerodynamic principles and incorporate propulsion systems that resemble modern aircraft design. Archaeological sites in India contain evidence that supports these ancient accounts. Radioactive skeletons have been found in the ruins of Harappa and Mohenjo-Daro, with radiation levels that suggest exposure to nuclear explosions. The cities themselves show signs of sudden destruction by intense heat that melted stone and fused sand into glass. The pattern of destruction matches what would be expected from aerial bombardment using advanced weapons. Similar evidence appears at sites around the world. In Scotland, ancient hill forts show signs of vitrification, where stone walls were heated to temperatures that turned them into glass. The heat required for this process exceeds what could be produced by normal fires, suggesting the use of advanced thermal weapons. The pattern of melting indicates that the heat came from above, as if the forts were attacked from the air. In the Sahara Desert, areas of fused sand create sheets of natural glass that extend for miles. The melting temperatures required to create these formations exceed what solar heating or lightning strikes could produce. The glass contains trace elements that suggest artificial heating sources, possibly from directed energy weapons that could focus intense heat over large areas. The distribution of these vitrification sites suggests a global conflict that involved advanced technology. The destruction patterns appear at strategic locations that would have controlled important resources or transportation routes. The timing of the destruction corresponds to periods of rapid climate change and social collapse that marked the end of advanced ancient civilizations. The survivors of these conflicts carried forward fragmented memories of the advanced technology that had been lost. Their descendants became the builders of the megalithic monuments that preserved technical knowledge in stone form. The pyramids, stone circles, and temple complexes that dot the ancient landscape serve as libraries of information encoded in mathematical relationships and astronomical alignments. These stone libraries require specific knowledge to decode their contents. The information is hidden in plain sight, but can only be accessed by those who understand the symbolic languages and mathematical codes used by their builders. The mystery schools that emerged in various civilizations were founded to preserve and transmit these decoding keys through carefully selected lineages. The initiates of these schools underwent extensive training that combined practical skills with esoteric knowledge. They learned astronomy, mathematics, engineering, and medicine, but also techniques for accessing altered states of consciousness and manipulating subtle energies. The complete curriculum prepared them to function as bridges between the physical and non-physical aspects of reality. The advanced students developed abilities that seemed supernatural to outside observers, but were actually applications of scientific principles that modern physics is only beginning to understand. They could influence weather patterns, communicate across vast distances without technology, and manipulate matter at the molecular level. These capabilities were considered natural expressions of properly trained human potential rather than miraculous divine interventions. The knowledge preserved by these schools included detailed maps of non-physical dimensions that interpenetrate our normal reality. These dimension maps showed how consciousness could travel beyond the physical body and access information from distant locations and different time periods. The techniques for dimensional travel were closely guarded secrets that required genetic predisposition and years of preparation to master safely. The ancient texts describe networks of advanced beings who existed primarily in these non-physical dimensions, but could manifest physical forms when necessary. These beings served as teachers and guides for human civilizations, providing knowledge and assistance during critical developmental periods. The Watchers and Anunnaki may have been members of these interdimensional networks rather than purely physical extraterrestrial visitors. The stone monuments serve as anchor points that stabilize connections between physical and non-physical realms. Their specific locations were chosen based on natural energy concentrations and geological features that enhance interdimensional communication. The chambers and passages within these structures create resonance conditions that facilitate contact with non-physical intelligences. Modern researchers investigating these sites with sensitive instruments have detected anomalous electromagnetic fields, gravitational fluctuations, and acoustic phenomena that suggest the monuments are still functioning as designed. The effects are subtle but measurable, indicating that ancient technology continues to operate even after thousands of years. The reactivation of these ancient systems may be connected to current astronomical cycles that are bringing our solar system into alignment with galactic energy fields. The precession of the equinoxes is carrying Earth through regions of space with different energetic properties that could reactivate dormant technologies and reopen communication channels that have been closed for millennia. The prophecies preserved by various ancient cultures all point to a time of return when the gods or advanced beings will resume direct contact with humanity. These predictions specify astronomical events and time cycles that are approaching completion in our current era. The return may not involve physical visitation, but rather the reactivation of communication systems that have remained dormant since the last great catastrophe. The bloodlines that carry the genetic keys for operating these ancient systems are still present in human populations around the world. The knowledge of how to recognize and train individuals with the proper genetic heritage has been preserved through secret societies and mystery schools that have maintained their traditions for thousands of years. The signs suggest that we are approaching another critical transition point in the ancient cycle. The knowledge systems established by the Watchers are beginning to reactivate as cosmic conditions align with the parameters they established for their eventual return. The question is not whether contact will be reestablished, but whether humanity is prepared to handle the responsibilities that come with restored access to advanced interdimensional technologies. The stones remember everything, waiting patiently for the moment when the stars align correctly and the bloodlines awaken to reclaim their inheritance. The Watchers have never truly departed. They have simply been waiting on the other side of the veil, maintaining their vigil through the long centuries of human forgetfulness, ready to resume their ancient role as guides and teachers when the time is right. The ancient sites scattered across our planet whisper of technologies that vanish like smoke when examined too closely. In the ruins of Pumapunku, high in the Bolivian Andes, stone blocks weighing over 100 tons fit together with joints so precise that engineers marvel at the craftsmanship. The surfaces are polished to mirror smoothness, cut with angles that require laser precision. Yet the people who lived there possessed no iron tools, no wheels, no written language that historians can decipher. The H-blocks of Pumapunku interlock like puzzle pieces, each one unique but designed to connect with specific partners. The drilling patterns show perfectly round holes with spiral grooves that match modern diamond-tipped bits. The stone itself is andesite, harder than granite, requiring industrial equipment to shape. Local legends say the blocks were not carved but molded, formed from liquid stone by beings who commanded the very elements. In Lebanon, the massive platform of Baalbek rests on foundation stones that dwarf even the largest blocks of the Great Pyramid. The trilithon consists of 3 limestone megaliths, each weighing over 800 tons. They were quarried from a site half a mile away, transported uphill and placed with mathematical precision. Roman engineers later built their own temple on top of this platform, but they left records stating clearly that they did not construct the foundation itself. The Romans, masters of engineering and construction, admitted they could not move stones of such size. Their heaviest lifting equipment could handle blocks of perhaps 50 tons under ideal conditions. Yet someone before them had moved stones 16 times that weight and placed them with accuracy measured in millimeters. The Roman inscriptions describe finding the platform already ancient, built by a race they called the Giants of Old. Deep beneath the Giza Plateau, ground-penetrating radar has revealed chambers and tunnels that extend far beyond the known passages of the pyramids. These underground spaces follow geometric patterns that suggest a vast network connecting all 3 major pyramids with the Sphinx and several smaller structures. The chambers contain no artifacts, no decorations, no clues about their original purpose. They exist as empty spaces carved from solid bedrock, with the same precision found in the pyramid passages above. The Sphinx itself poses questions that Egyptology struggles to answer. Water erosion patterns on its body indicate exposure to rainfall that ended over 8,000 years ago, long before the pharaohs claimed the Nile Valley. The head is disproportionately small for the body, suggesting it was recarved from an original that depicted something else entirely. Ground radar shows that the paws of the Sphinx rest on a chamber that has never been officially excavated. In the Amazon rainforest, satellite imaging has revealed geometric earthworks covering thousands of square miles. These geoglyphs, hidden beneath the forest canopy for centuries, form perfect circles, squares, and hexagons, with dimensions that require aerial surveys to appreciate fully. The earthworks predate known Amazonian civilizations by millennia, yet they demonstrate sophisticated understanding of geometry and landscape engineering. The builders of these earthworks moved millions of tons of soil to create their patterns. They diverted rivers, flattened hills, and carved channels that still function as drainage systems after thousands of years. The geometric precision of their work rivals modern surveying, yet they supposedly possessed no metal tools, no domesticated animals for heavy labor, no written language to preserve their engineering knowledge. Carbon dating of organic materials from the earthwork sites yields dates that push human civilization in South America back far beyond accepted timelines. The results are so unexpected that many samples have been retested multiple times, always with the same impossible conclusions. The earthworks were constructed during the Ice Age, when sea levels were hundreds of feet lower and global temperatures were far colder than today. Similar earthworks appear on other continents, always in locations that were above water during the Ice Age but are now submerged or buried beneath accumulated sediments. Off the coast of Japan, the Yonaguni Monument displays stepped platforms and carved passages that extend 60 feet below current sea levels. Marine archaeologists have confirmed that the structure was above water 12,000 years ago, placing its construction during the same period as the Amazon geoglyphs. The Yonaguni Monument includes features that appear artificial but use construction techniques unknown to modern engineering. Massive stone blocks are joined without mortar, using interlocking joints that distribute stress across multiple contact points. The passages incorporate acoustic properties that amplify and focus sound waves, creating resonance chambers that affect visitors in measurable ways. Similar underwater structures have been discovered in the Mediterranean, the Caribbean, and the Indian Ocean. Each site displays the same characteristics: massive stone construction, precise geometric layouts, and flooding that occurred at the end of the last ice age. The distribution suggests a global civilization that thrived during the Ice Age and was drowned when the glaciers melted and sea levels rose. The technology required for underwater construction exceeds what ancient people are supposed to have possessed. Working beneath hundreds of feet of water requires diving equipment, waterproof tools, and methods for moving heavy materials in an aquatic environment. Modern underwater construction relies on sophisticated equipment and techniques. Yet the evidence shows that ancient builders not only worked underwater but did so with precision that modern divers struggle to match. The joints between blocks are perfectly sealed, the surfaces are smooth and level, and the overall construction shows no signs of damage from water pressure or marine erosion. The builders possessed technology that could function in environments where humans cannot normally survive. The megalithic walls of Sacsayhuaman display similar technological sophistication on dry land. The stones are fitted together with such precision that not even a sheet of paper can slide between them. The blocks are polygonal, with multiple faces that lock together in 3 dimensions. Each stone is unique, custom cut to fit with its neighbors in a pattern that distributes earthquake forces throughout the entire structure. The builders of Sacsayhuaman moved blocks, weighing over 200 tons, up steep mountain slopes and positioned them with millimeter accuracy. They cut hard volcanic stone into complex shapes that require modern computer-controlled machinery to duplicate. The surfaces show tool marks that don't match any known ancient implements, suggesting the use of cutting technologies that left no trace behind. Local traditions describe the construction process in terms that sound more like manufacturing than masonry. The stones were said to be softened like clay, shaped by hand, then hardened again into their final positions. Chemical analysis of the stone surfaces has revealed molecular changes that could result from exposure to acids or other agents that temporarily alter the crystalline structure of rock. The same molecular signatures appear on megalithic blocks around the world, from Easter Island to Ireland. The chemical changes are consistent across different types of stone and different climatic conditions, process rather than natural weather suggesting a commoning. The builders possessed techniques for manipulating stone at the molecular level, making it temporarily plastic enough to shape before returning it to its original hardness. The precision of ancient metalwork displays similar technological mysteries. In Colombia, gold artifacts from the Quimbaya culture include objects that appear to be scale models of aircraft. When examined by aeronautical engineers, these golden objects demonstrate understanding of flight dynamics, including swept wings, vertical stabilizers, and propulsion systems. Wind tunnel tests confirm that the designs would actually fly if scaled up and powered appropriately. The level of detail in these golden aircraft models exceeds what would be expected from decorative art. The proportions follow aerodynamic principles that weren't understood by conventional archaeology until the Wright brothers proved that human flight was possible. The builders possessed knowledge of aviation that they encoded in permanenting the designs for future discovery. Similar golden form, preserved metallic artifacts appear in museums around the world, often classified as religious objects or decorative art, because their true purpose isn't recognized by curators trained in conventional archaeology. Bronze objects from ancient China include devices with gear trains and mechanical linkages that resemble clockwork mechanisms. Iron tools from Africa display metallurgical techniques that produce alloys stronger than modern steel. The Baghdad battery demonstrates ancient understanding of electrochemistry that predates official discovery of electrical principles by over 2,000 years. The clay jars contain copper cylinders and iron rods that generate electrical current when filled with acidic solutions. Similar devices have been found throughout Mesopotamia, suggesting widespread knowledge of electrical phenomena in the ancient world. The purpose of these electrical devices remains unclear, but their construction indicates sophisticated understanding of chemical reactions and metal properties. The copper is precisely shaped, and the iron carefully selected for optimal current production. The proportions of the components follow mathematical relationships that maximize electrical output, showing that the builders understood principles of battery design that weren't rediscovered until the 18th century. Ancient texts describe devices that produced light without flame, weapons that struck from a distance, and vehicles that traveled without touching the ground. These descriptions were long dismissed as fantasy, but archaeological discoveries increasingly support the existence of advanced technologies in the ancient world. The golden aircraft of Colombia, the electrical batteries of Baghdad, and the precision stonework of global megaliths all point toward capabilities that conventional history cannot explain. The builders of these ancient technologies left no instruction manuals, no blueprints, no written records explaining how their devices functioned. The knowledge disappeared as completely as if it had been deliberately erased, leaving only the artifacts themselves as proof that such capabilities once existed. The silence suggests that advanced knowledge was restricted to small groups who took their secrets with them when they died or departed. The distribution of ancient technologies follows patterns that suggest coordinated development rather than independent invention. Similar techniques appear simultaneously in locations separated by thousands of miles and centuries of time. The knowledge spread too quickly and too uniformly to result from normal cultural exchange or gradual technological development. The astronomical alignments built into ancient sites demonstrate knowledge of celestial mechanics that required observation spanning many generations. The builders understood concepts like axial precession, orbital eccentricity, and galactic rotation that weren't officially discovered until modern times. They encoded this information in stone monuments that serve as permanent records of astronomical data. The Antikythera mechanism represents the pinnacle of ancient technological achievement that archaeologists are willing to acknowledge officially. This bronze computer could predict eclipses, track planetary positions, and calculate calendar dates with accuracy that rivals modern electronic devices. Its construction required knowledge of gear ratios, differential mechanisms, and precision manufacturing that supposedly didn't exist in the ancient world. Yet the Antikythera mechanism is clearly ancient, recovered from a shipwreck that dates to the 1st century before Christ. Carbon dating of organic materials associated with the device confirms its age, while analysis of the bronze alloy matches other artifacts from the same period. The mechanism proves that ancient craftsmen possessed technological capabilities that conventional history claims were impossible. The device itself may be a simplified version of more complex mechanisms that haven't survived to the present day. The bronze construction suggests it was designed for portability rather than maximum precision. Larger, more sophisticated versions might have existed in ancient observatories and temples, but would have been made from materials that corroded or were melted down for other purposes over the centuries. The knowledge required to construct such mechanisms had to be preserved and transmitted through educational systems that no longer exist. The precision manufacturing, mathematical calculations, and astronomical observations needed for the Antikythera mechanism represent the culmination of scientific traditions that took centuries to develop. The sudden appearance of such advanced technology suggests that complete educational systems existed in the ancient world, but left no written records of their curricula or methods. The mystery schools that emerged in various ancient civilizations may have served knowledge. The repositories for this technical institutions trained selected individuals in sciences that were considered too dangerous or too powerful for general distribution. The graduates became the architects, engineers, and advisors who designed the megalithic monuments and advanced devices that modern archaeology struggles to explain. The initiation practices of these schools included training in mathematics, astronomy, metallurgy, and construction techniques, but also in more esoteric subjects that modern science is only beginning to understand. Students learned to manipulate natural forces, communicate across vast distances, and access information through means that don't rely on physical senses. The complete curriculum prepared them to function as bridges between different levels of reality. The schools maintained their secrecy through carefully controlled membership and elaborate initiation procedures that tested candidates for genetic heritage, intellectual capability, and psychological stability. Only those who demonstrated the proper qualifications were granted access to advanced knowledge that could reshape the physical world. The training process took decades and required complete dedication from students who often spent their entire lives within the school's walls. The architectural features of ancient temples and monuments reflect the influence of these mystery schools. The buildings incorporate acoustic properties, electromagnetic effects, and geometric relationships that enhance altered states of consciousness and facilitate contact with non-physical intelligences. The structures served as technological interfaces that amplified human capabilities and enabled communication with advanced beings who existed beyond normal sensory perception. The chambers within these monuments create specific environmental conditions that affect human brainwaves, hormone production, and neural activity. Modern research has confirmed that exposure to certain frequencies, magnetic fields, and acoustic resonances can trigger profound changes in consciousness and perception. The ancient builders understood these effects and incorporated them into their architectural designs with scientific precision. The stone circles, pyramids, and temple complexes that dot the ancient landscape function as a global network of consciousness-altering devices. Their locations were chosen based on natural energy concentrations and geological features that enhance their effects. The network operates through principles that modern physics is only beginning to recognize, involving quantum entanglement, morphic resonance, and dimensional interfaces that connect physical reality with other levels of existence. The operators of this network possessed abilities that seemed supernatural to ordinary observers, but were actually expressions of human potential that can be developed through proper training and genetic predisposition. They could influence weather patterns, communicate telepathically across continents, and manipulate matter at the subatomic level. These capabilities were considered normal expressions of properly trained human beings, rather than miraculous divine interventions. The departure of the beings who established this network left humanity with functional technology, but without the knowledge needed to maintain or operate it effectively. The stone monuments continue to generate their effects automatically, but the conscious direction that once coordinated their activities is no longer present. The network still functions, but at a reduced level, like a sophisticated computer system running on autopilot after its programmers have gone home. The bloodlines that carry the genetic keys for operating these ancient systems are still present in human populations, but most individuals who possess the necessary heritage are unaware of their potential. The knowledge of how to recognize and train these individuals has been preserved through secret societies and mystery schools, but the complete activation protocols may have been lost when the original builders departed. The reactivation of the ancient network may be connected to astronomical cycles that are bringing our solar system into alignment with galactic energy fields that haven't been accessible for thousands of years. The stone monuments were designed to respond to these cosmic rhythms, gradually increasing their activity as the proper celestial conditions return. The builders may have intended the system to reactivate automatically when the time was right for restored contact. The signs of this reactivation are becoming increasingly apparent to those who know what to look for. Sensitive individuals report unusual experiences at ancient sites, electronic equipment malfunctions near megalithic monuments, and animals display abnormal behaviors in areas where stone circles and pyramids concentrate natural energies. The ancient network is awakening after millennia of dormancy, preparing for a return that was planned long before recorded history began. The awakening extends beyond the monuments themselves. In laboratories around the world, scientists studying ancient DNA samples have discovered sequences that challenge everything we thought we knew about human evolution. These genetic fragments don't follow normal inheritance patterns. They appear suddenly in the fossil record, as if inserted rather than evolved. The sequences contain information that resembles programming code more than natural genetic material. Dr. Sarah Chen, a geneticist at Stanford University, made headlines in 2019 when her team discovered what they called anomalous insertions in human chromosome 2. The sequences were found in populations across 6 continents, yet they showed no signs of gradual development through natural selection. Instead, they appeared to have been placed deliberately, like software updates installed in biological hardware. The genetic modifications enhanced specific capabilities that would have been crucial for preserving and transmitting complex knowledge, enhanced memory capacity, improved pattern recognition, and increased sensitivity to electromagnetic fields. These traits appear most frequently in bloodlines that claim descent from ancient royal families, the same lineages that built the megalithic monuments and preserved the mystery school traditions. In the archives of the Vatican, sealed documents contain references to artifacts that were never meant for public viewing. Mesopotamian tablets describe devices that could capture and store human consciousness, allowing knowledge to be preserved beyond physical death. Egyptian papyri mention crystalline objects that could project images and sounds across vast distances. These weren't religious metaphors, but technical specifications for technologies that operated on principles we're only beginning to understand. The crystal skulls that have appeared in private collections around the world display properties that conventional geology cannot explain. Made from single pieces of quartz that show no tool marks, they were carved with precision that requires modern laser equipment. When subjected to certain frequencies, they generate electromagnetic fields and emit sounds that affect human brainwave patterns. The skulls appear to be storage devices, containing information encoded in the crystal matrix itself. In the mountains of Tibet, Monasteries guard texts written in languages that predate known writing systems. These documents contain star charts that show celestial bodies invisible to the naked eye, medical procedures using plants that don't grow in the region, and mathematical formulas that solve problems modern science has only recently recognized. The monks claim these texts were already ancient when their monasteries were founded over 1,000 years ago. The Tibetan texts describe techniques for preserving consciousness beyond physical death and transferring knowledge directly from mind to mind. The procedures involve specific meditation practices, acoustic resonances, and electromagnetic fields generated by crystalline devices. The descriptions match reports from modern consciousness researchers who have achieved similar results using advanced neurotechnology and quantum field manipulation. In the deserts of Peru, the Nazca lines stretch across hundreds of square miles, creating patterns that can only be appreciated from high altitude. The lines were made by removing dark surface stones to reveal lighter sand beneath. But the precision of the work suggests the use of surveying tools and aerial oversight that shouldn't have existed when they were created. Some lines point to star positions that were significant thousands of years ago, but are no longer visible from the same locations due to stellar motion. The Nazca Plateau also contains evidence of ancient runways, flat areas that show signs of extreme heat exposure and chemical residues that match modern rocket fuel compounds. Ground-penetrating radar has revealed underground chambers beneath these areas, containing metallic objects that generate magnetic anomalies strong enough to affect compass readings from the surface. Local legends describe these sites as landing places for sky vehicles that carried the ancestors to the stars. In Scotland, the ancient stone circles of the Hebrides Islands contain acoustic properties that focus sound waves into tight beams that can carry voices for miles without losing clarity. The stones were positioned using mathematical relationships that create interference patterns in sound waves, allowing communication across vast distances without any technology beyond carefully placed rocks. The builders understood principles of wave physics that weren't officially discovered until the 19th century. The stone circles also generate measurable electromagnetic effects that vary with astronomical cycles. During specific celestial alignments, the monuments produce electrical fields strong enough to power modern electronic devices. The effects are strongest during eclipses and planetary conjunctions, suggesting the circles were designed to harvest energy from cosmic events that occur on predictable schedules. Aboriginal Australians describe the dream time as a parallel reality that coexists with normal physical existence. Their oral traditions include detailed maps of underground water sources, hidden mineral deposits, and navigation routes that span the entire continent. This knowledge was preserved for over 40,000 years without written language, passed down through carefully trained memory keepers who could recite entire libraries of information with perfect accuracy. The Aboriginal techniques for accessing the dream time involve specific breathing patterns, rhythmic sounds, and exposure to electromagnetic fields generated by certain rock formations. Modern researchers studying these practices have confirmed that they can induce measurable changes in brain activity, creating states of consciousness that enhance memory, pattern recognition, and intuitive problem-solving abilities. Native American traditions describe star people who descended from the sky to teach the first humans how to live in harmony with natural forces. These beings established medicine wheels, stone circles that mark important astronomical events and concentrate Earth energies at specific locations. The wheels were built using surveying techniques that required understanding of magnetic declination, stellar motion, and geological forces that affect the Earth's magnetic field. The stars still wheel overhead as they did when the first Anunnaki descended from distant worlds. In hidden chambers beneath ancient monuments, crystalline devices await reactivation by those who carry the proper genetic keys. The bloodlines that survived the Great Flood continue their watch, preserving fragments of knowledge that once shaped civilizations and moved mountains of stone. From the clay tablets of Mesopotamia to the stone circles of Scotland, from the elongated skulls of Peru to the underwater ruins of Japan, the evidence whispers the same story. Beings of light and knowledge walked among our ancestors, teaching them secrets that transformed primitive tribes into builders of impossible monuments. When the waters came, they departed, leaving behind only traces encoded in stone and blood. The ancient network stirs again as cosmic cycles align and forgotten technologies begin to hum with life. Perhaps the Watchers never truly left. Perhaps they simply withdrew beyond the veil, waiting for the moment when humanity would be ready to reclaim its inheritance from the sky. The stones remember everything, and soon they may speak again to those who dare to listen to the whispers of forgotten gods. If this story has stirred something in you, please leave a like or subscribe if you're new to the channel. Share with us the mysteries you would like us to explore next. Until next time, sweet dreams and keep questioning. Good night.